podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay, breaking down tonight's fun Friday NBA slate, and it's a monster one. Looking at all the totals here, all over 200. You have, let's see, 5 over 220 tonight. So going to be another high-scoring night, so get your calculators ready.
Yeah, and we were just talking how roster construction in cash games is going to be really intriguing because there's so many different directions to go, and there's really a ton of safe options if you look at it. So this is going to be a pretty intriguing night. I'd say at least throw a few sort of YOLO GPP lineups in there, even if you're not feeling totally comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of punt plays that have opened up for tonight, which are kind of intriguing. They make that whole stars and scrubs things really work that we've seen kind of take off over the past really week or so. More so, the other night when Memphis went down. And Memphis is playing tonight with their fully functional 7 bodies that they have on the court. So we'll break that down. But running through the games here, the two real highest totals tonight, the two kind of exciting teams. The Warriors are playing the Trailblazers. The Thunder are playing the Timberwolves there. 225, 227. They also both have 12.5 point spreads. That's kind of looking like more GPP territory for me than cash.
Yeah, and again, we talked about a lot of options sort of in other games and stuff. So when you look at Durant, Westbrook, Lillard, Curry, they're all obviously in play, and all of them have 70-point upside tonight, but a little tougher to fit in, especially when you look at some of those 6 to 8K range guys at all the positions. They're really intriguing options. So,
yeah, and speaking of that range, you're looking at Boston, Houston 223, Sacramento Magic 221, Sixers, Nets 211 there. Those are 3 games I'm really comfortable just building a core around, especially that Celtics and Rockets game at 223, just the 5.5 point spread. The last time Boston really blew them out, their starters did not even play the fourth quarter, so I don't expect that to happen this time around.
Those 3 games are definitely the ones I'm going to be focusing on, that Boston backcourt, and then that Orlando-Sacramento game with Boogie is out tonight, so we're going to be looking at some very intriguing options on both sides there.
Yeah, and a couple games lower. You're looking at Miami Heat. They have a 103 total. The Pelicans and Memphis game. I'm kind of surprised. Just a 1.5 favorite there for New Orleans, basically going up against the B team.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just think New Orleans defense is pathetic, which it is. But come on, that's bad.
Yeah, and the J. Michael Green it's kind of an experiment that's been getting really pricey today. So that's another thing we're going to talk about here.
Yeah. Look at some games that are kind of off the radar for me tonight. Knicks Clippers, for the most part, is off the radar. 10-point spread. Just not a big fan of that game, just with all the other options. Jazz Washington, 198 total. There's pick and choose maybe, but it's not something to get crazy about.
Yeah, those are 2 games that that Knicks Clippers game I just look at and I say maybe like you throw a Robin Lopez in there or something, but other than that, it's really, really not intriguing to me at all.
Yeah. Moving over to point guards tonight, and we're taking a look at some injury concerns. Mike Conley was supposed to be out for just two games and then coming back, but he's listed out as indefinitely. They already lost Mario Chalmers, so they basically down to 2 guys that they just signed, and you're going to look at some Lance Stevenson running the ball back there. But outside of that, it's a situation where Drew Holiday is going to basically be playing against Stevenson or guys that were just called up for the D-League.
Pretty incredible. I believe Jarrell Martin is getting playing time for them at the current state of things. So that's how you know things are getting a little wacky in Memphis.
And that just kind of opens up things. The Memphis side, it's Stevenson, Allen, and Carter there that we'll talk about. But as far as the guys that they just signed, I don't even know if they're on the board yet here on the sites. But that would just take things out of play for me. They're not in play as punt plays at all.
No, not really.
The other one, Alfred Payton, questionable tonight, dealing with a sprained elbow. Only played 20 minutes. And, the Magic are pretty battered tonight. You're looking at possibly no Alfred Payton, already know Vucevic there. Um, the problem is Scott Skiles.
Yeah,
It's
he's a big problem. For us DFS players, he is a large problem because at any moment he can just bench everyone. So, I mean, I don't think that should sort of totally shy you away from some of these intriguing matchups against the Kings. I think the Kings outweighs a lot of the Skiles sort of factor, but yeah, definitely something to always keep track of.
because basically, I mean, if Payton does sit tonight, you could see Jennings get some run, 3,500, but you also could see CJ Watson get some run. And we saw
Mhm.
Watson get 24 minutes. He's averaged 23 over the last 5 games there. So he's kind of possibly even taken over the role from Jennings there. And that's a nifty situation. And the fact that Oladipo can play point guard and Fournier can play the two,
Right.
they have some options. You could see some more Hazonja out there. I'm just playing it safe with the three Fournier Oladipo.
And the bigger thing is tonight you don't really need to strain and stretch for that value. So there's already some pretty intriguing options in those lower ranges. So it's almost not really valid, for tonight.
Yeah, we'll work our way up from there and starting with some value guys to take a look at tonight. Marcus Smart just 4,300 in a massive high total game. It's one that kind of really suits him where he can go out, get some steals, get some rebounds. Doesn't necessarily have to score to put up fantasy points, which I like about that. 4,300 is an intriguing price. He's definitely got 30 fantasy point upside. We've seen him go off before. Um, Definitely, I like him a lot in tournaments. I think that's just a game to target. I love that Boston backcourt.
Right. And the focus is there's going to be fantasy points to be had in that backcourt. And I think Smart's the more risky GPP version, but he's also cheaper and opens up things. So yeah, he's definitely very intriguing tonight.
Yeah. Another guy to take a look at, Darren Collison. Looking at minutes wise, he's played 39, 35, and 33 over the last 3 games. 30-point games in 2 out of the 3 there. With of course the one bad one coming against New Orleans after putting up 31 against San Antonio. But I expect a lot of usage to shift around to other guys tonight with no Cousins, and Collison's going to be one of those guys who comes off and plays a little bit of shooting guard, plays a little bit of point guard. You could see them even go small, especially against this Orlando side that it's not a big team at all.
Right, and you look at even the recent upside he's shown for his price, which is still very deflated. So that's another intriguing option that is just right there,
Yeah, it's great exposure at a cheap price tag to this high-scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
Moving up the list here, now we take a pretty big jump, and there's 2 guys that are in that 6K range that I really like, and I like both of them. You're not on one of them as much as I am, but I like Goran Dragic at 6,600. And of course, I like Ish Smith as well, and I'll let you talk about Ish. I like him as well, but you're more on him than Dragic.
Yeah, I just think he has more upside than Dragic tonight. Just that Miami Bulls game, I kind of went in on that game the last time they played, and I watched, and it wasn't as intriguing to me. Dragic obviously has a high floor. I do like him in cash, but I just think Ish has more upside, especially for tournaments tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Ish Smith, I think a pretty safe play with Jahlil Okafor out. I mean, it's very clear with Okafor out that team on offense, Covington, Ish Smith, Noel,
Yeah.
all the value plays that are coming, Jeremy Grant, Thompson, all are playing so much better and so much better for fantasy purposes. And I do like Smith there, but I like Dragic. I just think his usage rates come up with Chris Bosh out, and he's been really consistent. You're looking, he's averaging 18, 5, and 7 over the last 5 games, averaging 35 minutes per game. With no real backup point guard, he's kind of forced to take on a pretty heavy role, minutes-wise. And I just think in this matchup against Chicago, coming off the back-to-back, I just think he can go off for the game he did before and go for 41 fantasy points again.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I just think one of the things I'm kind of focusing on for tonight is correlation plays and sort of stacking. I think that's really going to be the way you separate yourself in the tournament. So you mentioned Covington. I think that's an interesting stacking option with Ish Smith.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. And 2 guys going up. Isaiah Thomas and Rajon Rondo, really interesting plays. Cheaper on DK. That's the difference I've
Mhm.
seen. You're looking at FanDuel, and Rondo's a little bit more expensive. Even Ish Smith, just kind of creeping up in that range, but both below 8K on DraftKings there, and I think certainly in play for me.
Yeah, I love Isaiah Thomas tonight. I think he's one of the best bets to reach value on the whole slate. Only 7,300 on DraftKings and going up against a Houston team that plays high paced, and I just really like that game. So yeah, that's really nice there. And then Rondo, he's been struggling a little bit lately in terms of fantasy points, but at that sort of price on DraftKings, yeah, definitely like that there.
Yeah, me too. And like you mentioned, that Thomas game or that Rockets Celtics game is going to be huge. Thomas is going to really thrive. Houston's been a little better against the point guard of late, but they still rank in the bottom half in fantasy points allowed. Of course, with that total, you expect them to go off. And I mean, that's the Celtics blew them out last time, and Thomas hit 41 fantasy points in just 23 minutes. If
Right.
he can see 30 to 32, 35 minutes, and Houston keeps this game close, the sky's the limit for this backcourt and this team.
And there's real potential for Harden and him to just have that stretch where they just go back and forth on each other, trying to one up each other. I guess that's a little narrative street, but that's definitely a real possibility.
Definitely. Creeping in the top range, love Drew Holiday still, coming off back-to-back 50 fantasy point outings. Going to be facing a depleted Memphis team. I just think with that total, with that spread, with what Vegas is seeing, I'm going to trust them. I don't think there's too much of a blowout concern here. I just think Holiday, they have possibly two healthy guards if Norris Cole sits, but Holiday's still going to get a heavy workload either way.
Yeah, he's been tremendous lately, and they're finally sort of moving him around and moving him into the starting lineup and giving him more minutes. So yeah, definitely a nice option there.
Yeah. And then now we creep into the elite territory and come up. Kemba Walker's been playing well. His price is a little higher than what I've liked the last week or so, but tougher matchup. I don't mind him though, just because Charlotte still has a decent total, and Kemba's been the one driving those totals up because he's been so good.
Yeah, always a GPP play. I mean, he just always has that high upside for his price, it seems. So even on a night like tonight, you could see him getting 50 to 55 fantasy points in terms of like ceiling. So yeah, always in play.
He's going to be so low owned tonight.
Hmm.
You're just looking at all those other plays on the board that we just went through for cheaper. So I like him. John Wall. I think with Shelvin Mack, it's a pretty size difference up there. I don't mind it. I'm not on him tonight. I'm not on him or Chris Paul. I just think if I'm paying up, it's going to be in GPPs. It's going to be for the big three of Curry, Westbrook, or Lillard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the straightforward way I'm looking at it as well. It's not that they're bad plays. It's just not they don't have a great matchup, and there's all these other plays around them that I really like. So fading because of other options, basically.
Yeah, I just don't think you got to essentially hope Westbrook goes off for what he did the last time out, which you don't expect 70 fantasy points, but 60 definitely possible. But if he sits in that 48 to 52 range at that price, I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah, you're getting crushed if that happens, especially in tournaments. So yeah.
Looking at shooting guard tonight, and Jimmy Butler still ruled out for tonight, doubtful. You're going to see Etwan Moore come in. Not a great matchup for that team, but you're still going to see Gasol, Rose take on a higher usage with Butler out. It doesn't really open up anything. I'm not on Etwan Moore. I think Gasol is just the guy who gets the usage, but I'm just not a big fan of the back-to-back matchup with Miami.
Makes sense. As I mentioned with the Boston Houston matchup, James Harden is I think he's going to score in this game, but to reach value at his price is going to be a little tougher tonight. He's got a tough defensive matchup, and it's not necessarily a fade for me, but I'm probably not going to have many shares of him either.
Yeah, I think out of the 10K guys that you're going up above, I'd rather pay up for other options. And yeah, it is a tough matchup. And you look at the game, I mean, you look at what he did against Philly. Wasn't great from the field, 8 of 26, but still put up 54 fantasy points. The guy gets to the line. I mean, he had arguably his worst game of the season against Boston. That's just because they got a really great defense on that backcourt. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, definitely worthy of some shares just because of his upside, just because of that total. But yeah, I think I'm going to be limiting myself, and if I'm paying up, it's going to be guys for Durant or those point guards or Davis.
Right.
But I think my top option is Oladipo. He's just my favorite play from that game. No Vooch there. The usage is going to go around, averaging 31 fantasy points over the last 4. And any matchup where a backcourt's against the Kings, I'm all over it.
Yeah, I mean, I just love this game. This is my favorite game of the night. The more I look at it, and yeah, he's just a great play. And then you kind of look at that same range. He kind of overwhelms the other options around there for me too. Like I don't hate Klay Thompson, but when you look at McCollum, Wade, and Batum, I think he's just the better option of those on DraftKings at least.
Yeah, I think so too. And I just think in a similar price tag, Oladipo's the guy. Like he's just the guy on that team. He's going to be the guy scoring the points tonight. Klay Thompson, there's 3, 4 other guys that can do it. It's just a matter of if he's hitting those shots, he can go off because he can. We know he can put off 20 fantasy points in the quarter and keep going. McCollum, if you're kind of banking on that game staying close, I don't mind him. I just think his upside's just always a little bit limited in comparison to the other shooting guard plays.
Agreed.
Taking a step down though, like Evan Fournier. Fournier is a small forward now in FanDuel. That's changed. I like Zach LaVine. Dealing with a elbow issue or a shoulder issue, but not on the injury report tonight. Said he was going to be fine. He's crushed OKC this season, and that's no surprise because they've really struggled against shooting guards. But I mean, averaging 23, 5, and 1 in 3 games against OKC in just 26 minutes per game.
And now he's getting more minutes. So, and in terms of him versus Wiggins, this is another night where I do like LaVine over Wiggins, even though Wiggins has been pretty solid the last 3 games.
Yeah, and I think maybe the difference, you're looking at DK, I still prefer LaVine. FanDuel, now that they switched the positions up, Wiggins small forward again, you're kind of open to a little more versatility.
Right.
But there's a lot of cheap options to the shooting guard that I'm really looking at. Love Evan Turner, shooting guard for $5K on DK there. He's a small forward on FanDuel. He's just that 6th man off the bench, 7th man, whatever you want to call him, just because him and Smart both come in. He's just the playmaker. I love watching him go out and just rack up a near triple-double. Like, he goes 7, 7, and 7 and just, does his thing.
Not something we'd expect someone to say ever.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, Brad Stevens has got a nice little system going there, and it seems he's made everyone pretty efficient, even if they don't necessarily get a ton of minutes. So yeah, he's been good this year. I expect that to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I love the backcourt taking shots against Houston. Averaging 28 minutes per game over the last 5, not too shabby. 27 fantasy points per game in that span. I'm just looking at him to kind of make all the pieces go tonight. I just think you look at that game, he could easily get over 30 minutes just because of Houston's size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, that whole Boston backcourt is in play for me tonight.
Yeah. And then looking at another one, Avery Bradley, 4,700. It's really cheap for that price for him. I mean, he hasn't shown off the big upside or really he hasn't been an attractive play, but that price tag in this matchup, I like him just because that going up against Harden, who doesn't play defense, I like him a lot.
Right. I probably like him least out of Marcus Smart for a little cheaper and Evan Turner for a little more, but he is in play. Again, I think all those guys are in play. Yeah.
I think if you're looking on DK for 300 more, if I can have Evan Turner, I'll take that. FanDuel, it's different just because Turner's a small forward, but right. Bradley, sitting at 5,200 is not too bad either.
Mm-hmm.
Going lower, I mean, now we start to reach into a range of Bojan Bogdanovic there, getting safe minutes, averaging 31 over the last 5. Matchup against Philly, I just expect 25 fantasy points out of him. That's just what I'm going to get from him.
Yeah, he's a nice cash game play tonight, especially at his price. But that Brooklyn team is a little hard to figure right now in terms of who's going to sort of have the stability there. But he's the one guy that's sort of locked in, on the perimeter.
Yeah, I think we were kind of looking at Sloan and Larkin, you always want exposure against the Sixers, but they ride the hot hand, and that's something that you got to figure out and just kind of take a shot at, which I don't like to do. I don't want to do on tonight's slate.
Right.
It's completely risky, but
it could pay off for you, but you don't necessarily need to do that tonight.
Yeah. Anyone cheaper that you're looking at?
Not especially. No.
Yeah, I think you're better off kind of sitting balanced in that 5 to 6K range and looking at Oladipo.
Yeah.
Moving on to small forward, and not a lot of injuries, but we will talk about the Memphis situation. Lance Stevenson still seeing above 20 minutes. Tony Allen still going to get a heavy workload. Definitely in play just because New Orleans is not a good defensive team. They're ranking the bottom 5 in points allowed per game. Decent pace game. I think they're in play, but I'm not going to be forcing them into my lineups like the past 2 games.
Right. Yeah, no. Not the same situation as what had previously been,
Yeah. Looking up at top options, and this is where it kind of gets a little bit tricky because there's a lot of guys in the 6K range, and it's so hard to rule out Durant and Cash just because he's so good. But I think on FanDuel, it's not completely out of the question just because the pricing's a little bit softer. But the guy's averaging over 60 fantasy points per game over the last 5, and it's so hard to get away from it in this matchup too.
It's hard to get away from him, but I can respect it if you do. Again, if you want to go with that balanced lineup tonight, I think there's a lot of options that will sort of not make you regret that decision. But I do, in terms of floor, he does definitely have the highest floor of these high-end options tonight for me.
Yeah, and you look, his floor is like people's ceilings these days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, and but there are a lot of cheaper options. And one guy that I will take a look at from Washington, Utah, is Gordon Hayward, just because he's been so consistent as far as cash game goes, averaging 25 and 3 over the last 6, and it just sits right around that 35 fantasy point mark night in and night out. And obviously, any perimeter wing guy against Washington is going to be on my radar. I just expect another 30, 35 fantasy point outing. So at that price tag, sitting below 7K, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I can respect that. He's definitely a nice cash play and relatively safe. So again, balanced lineups. He's one guy you can definitely look at for cash.
Yeah. Then there's a lot of guys that will. Covington, Trevor Ariza, Tobias Harris, Rudy Gay. That's going to be where you can just diversify yourself a little bit tonight.
Right.
But Rudy Gay is going to be the most popular with DeMarcus Cousins out.
Yeah, we were discussing what his ownership percentage potentially would be, and it's going to be nuts tonight. Like, if you're putting him in, if you just started looking at the slate and you're plugging him in, you're not going to be the only guy on him tonight. No. He's going to be in both cash and tournaments.
Yeah, I think GPPs, I still think he's going to be really highly on 40, 50%. Cash games, he should be well over that, well over 70. I think, especially on DK where he's 6,000. I just think that's it. I mean, with Gay out or with Cousins out this season, he's averaged a usage rate of 7% higher than he has all season. The numbers haven't really shown a dramatic increase, but in the matchup against Orlando, I think he's going to be the guy who really plays well. I mean, they're a middle of the road defense, so I like Gay a lot tonight.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the usage rate, and that's kind of more important for Rudy Gay and Cousins than even some of the other players in the league, because once they're out, it just opens up so much.
Yeah. But I mean, look at these other guys. Trevor Ariza. I like the wing guys against Boston because I'm not really attacking their backcourt, but Ariza is a guy who can go off against them because they've struggled against small forwards and power forwards, and we've seen Ariza play both positions tonight. Ben Solid, he's been a little bit more consistent of late, averaging 13, 3, and 4 with 3.6 blocks plus steals per game. So the defensive upside is there. I like it in that matchup. At that price, I mean, he's logging heavy minutes again.
And we've seen previously, like, there are just nights where they're kind of willing to go to him if he's hot. So he does have that 40 to 45 point upside, which you wouldn't really expect from Ariza. But yeah, he does definitely have that upside.
And I think with comparison to Harden, I think if I'm targeting Houston's players and playing the correlation, it's going to be Howard and Ariza over Harden. one, they're a better price.
Yeah.
And I just think the matchup's a lot better.
The matchup is definitely a lot better for Ariza and Howard.
Yeah.
And I know a guy you didn't mention, and I do like Jay Crowder tonight. I do think he's in play for sort of cash games. Probably not as good as the previously mentioned options, but I do think he's in play.
Yeah, I don't mind him. I mean, a 220 total over. Even looking at this game, it's just like, where do you even begin? You could plug anyone in. I could blindly close my eyes and just put it in. It would probably end up being a decent lineup if I'm picking from these guys.
Yeah.
But back to that 76ers Nets game, I really like Robert Covington. And just with Jahlil Okafor out, Covington's come alive, averaging 15, 7, and 3 with 3.2 blocks plus steals over the last 5. I love the matchup right there. And I just think both him and Ariza are great cash game guys on FanDuel. And I just think maybe Gay's just going to overlook them a little bit more and make their ownership a little less on DK.
Man, you look at Covington and sort of what has been his floor lately, and it's been really high. So I mean, he's definitely my favorite play out of that tier. But cash games and tournaments, he's in play for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. And look at Tony Allen, Stevenson, Carter. It's just depending on what site you're on because they do range from shooting guard to small forward. But all in play if you need to go a little bit cheaper. But I just don't see myself going down to them too much tonight.
Yeah, that's the theme I think for us right now. It's just don't overextend yourself because there is reasonable options at a lot of ranges of positions tonight.
Yeah. Looking at power forward tonight, and of course DeMarcus Cousins, power forward still on DK. It's only a matter of time before they shift him over to center, right? Like they have to sometimes.
They have to.
But yeah, he's out tonight, been suspended. You're looking at Costa Koufos, Willie Cauley-Stein picking up some minutes. Koufos is my preferred play, just because we've seen him play more when Cousins is down. He's averaged 11 and 8 in 9 games Cousins has missed this season.
And those are guys with reasonable upside and reasonable logic for going and punting, So those two are definitely in play for me. For sure.
I like him a little bit more on DK where you can roster 2 centers. I just think Koufos pairs up nicely with another center. Just treat him as a value play. FanDuel, I never feel comfortable playing a cheap center on FanDuel. I just don't.
Definitely a different situation, especially with the high upside of a lot of the higher price guys tonight.
Yeah, and especially the mention of going balanced. You don't really need to, but DK, it's a little bit different option with a little tighter pricing and being able to roster 2 centers.
Right.
But some other injury news, Zach Randolph is questionable tonight's game. JaMychal Green likely going to stay in the starting lineup. Still, either way, you're going to get some minutes. I'm not really attacking either of these 2 guys. JaMychal Green's price has just come up dramatically. 5,700 on DK and let's see over on here, 6,400. 6,400 on FanDuel. But once they finally adjusted their pricing like so dramatically and so quickly, it's JaMychal Green. That's who they've done it. That's their poison.
That's their guy, man. Okay, so his price has gone up a lot. He's not a bad play, but we're just working with a really small sample size here, and there's a pretty solid chance of regression coming in the next few games or so. Either way. So I don't like his price in sort of the range he's in now, just because of the players that are around him now. He's not a value play anymore. He's got to really hold it down. So I'm not sure that floor is there yet to consider him at that price.
Yeah, I think if he was still maybe 1,000, 1,500 cheaper, you'd give him a look. But now he's priced near Nerlens Noel, Thaddeus Young, Aaron Gordon. Guys who've been doing it much more consistently against proven opponents. They've just done it lately, and I prefer them over him, especially just him going up against Anthony Davis. It's not a terrible matchup because power forwards have done okay against New Orleans this season, but I'll pass. There's just too many other guys in other better spots.
Yeah, again, it's not an avoid full out, but there's just more appealing options.
Yeah. And then looking up top, Anthony Davis still below 10K, 9,800, such a great price for him on DK. And against Memphis, who basically are without an interior defense right now. And even when Davis was going up against guys like Gasol and the other options there, dominating. I mean, 20, 10, and 2 with 4.3 blocks on average in 3 games against Memphis this season.
And birthday game?
Oh, yeah. How do we? Yes, birthday game. So, there's your narrative. Anthony Davis birthday game. As long as he doesn't get hurt blowing out candles.
He's either going for 60 or he's rolling his ankle in the first quarter.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen today. Because you know what? I think the narrative street there, it's going to tick up his ownership just a little bit, even though he is already a solid play.
Yeah, definitely.
I like him a lot. Draymond Green's price is really intriguing at 8,000. I like him in tournaments tonight. You're saving $1,800 there. You could get a guy who puts up 45 to 50 fantasy points tonight. He's kind of bounced back. He's been a little bit more consistent, averaging 41 fantasy points over the last 5 games. Matchup against Portland's front court in the high-scoring game there. I don't hate it. I think he's a solid play in GPPs.
Of the Warriors, I actually like his matchup. Obviously, he doesn't have the same upside as Curry, but yeah, I do like his matchup tonight, and he's a sneaky play. Probably going to be lower owned, but I do think he's in play for tournaments.
Yeah, I just think he's a lower owned. I mean, he's not. I don't think many people are going to pay attention. I think it is a good game to get exposure to because it's sitting there with a 300-point total. So, yeah, I like him a lot. But I think going cheaper, Aaron Gordon, Thaddeus Young are my 2 cash game guys and tournament guys tonight. I like that matchup. Sacramento ranked 28th in defensive efficiency against power forwards. No Cousins, going to be some rebounds up for grabs, and we know Gordon does that well.
Yeah, and again, he's been pretty inconsistent lately, but there's no reason to avoid him. This game was made for him pretty much. So yeah, I love him at that price. And Thad Young again, he's the higher floored option of that grouping. I do like him a lot tonight.
Yeah, and I was a little bit shocked because Nerlens Noel, there were reports last game that he was going to have a 25-minute restriction. I was like, all right, so he's off the board for me. Plays 32 minutes, goes 17, 9, and 4 with 4 blocks, and steals there. And I'm just like, well, thanks. So it's safe to say he's healthy for tonight's game. I love his upside. I love him without Jahlil Okafor on the court. We've seen him really be more efficient offensively, especially with Ish Smith. His defensive upside, I just love him at center tonight against Brooklyn because they've allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing centers. And at that price tag, I mean, he's the cheaper 6,100 on DK, 63 on FanDuel. And it's so hard to get away from him tonight.
It's a nice
for cash, but GPPs, I know that upside's coming.
It's right there. It's staring you in the face. And he's such a good value. So 40-point upside is definitely in play for him tonight.
Yeah. And then I'm not a big fan of paying down to power forward. I just think that 6K range is just way too nice to go with. But anyone that kind of catches your eye below there that you might take a shot on either in a tournament?
Well, no. No. What you guys don't see before the show, I usually run through some names before the show, and he slaps my hand down. So, no, I just really like that 6K range today. I don't see a reason to really jump off of that. Maybe something opens up later, but is there anyone you're looking at there?
No, I don't think so. I'm just looking. I don't like Ibaka's inconsistency. I don't like him being the 3rd scoring option. Marvin Williams in a bit of a tougher matchup, but I don't hate him at that price of 5,400 on DK. He would probably be about as low as I can go, but I don't think I'll need to. That's the thing tonight. So yeah. if I just need a 5,400 power forward and he magically fits into one lineup, sure, but I just don't think I see myself going that low.
Right.
So moving over to center, and it's another night of top-heavy options, and we were kind of going back and forth, and because there's a duo tonight that I like, and you kind of like the other part of, but Gasol Whiteside.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be pretty interesting. I think both have nice upside. You're worried about the back-to-back with Pau. which I understand. And hey, if you want to go Whiteside, I think they're relatively similar options tonight. But I'm not quite as worried. I like Powell, and I just love his usage.
Yeah, I mean, with no Butler, he's the guy. I mean, we saw with that monster triple double, he can do that stuff. It is a tougher matchup against Miami's interior defense, a little bit slower pace game as well. But I do like him. It's just so hard to get away from Whiteside. I mean, his fantasy points per minute are just insane, averaging 17 and 13 over the last 6 games. The 4.5 blocks per game is just what I really like. And with Chicago's defensive efficiency being the bottom 5, I just see him coming and playing 28, 29 minutes and going for 45 plus fantasy points again.
Yeah, his ceiling is stupid right now. For the minutes he plays. So yeah, no, I agree. He is a strong play. I mean, both of them are strong plays. And I think even when you sort of dive down into Dwight Howard and Andre Drummond, I know you like Howard more than Drummond, but I think both of those are pretty strong plays as well.
Yeah, Drummond started to bounce back. He's got a nice it's not an appealing matchup, but I don't think it's a bad one because Charlotte, I mean, I don't see anyone who can really hang with Drummond down low. Mm-hmm. So I do like that. I think he goes out and snags his 15 rebounds, and if his offensive game's there, it'll definitely heighten his upside.
Right.
But yeah, Howard's the guy I like. I mean, he's just been quietly getting it done, averaging 19 and 12 over the last 5 games, 2.4 blocks plus steals per game. And in this matchup, I just think that's where you want to target is Boston's front court, and Howard's going to do that.
And we are a very pro Karl Towns pod normally, but I think tonight's an okay night to sort of sit him out. You look at those crazy options above him that aren't that much more expensive, and then Brook Lopez is right there as well. So it's kind of like I'm okay with sitting out on him tonight.
Yeah, I mean, usually we're all over Towns, and so he's more expensive than Whiteside, more expensive than Lopez on FanDuel and Drummond. Yeah, and he's just sitting at that price tag on it. It's just an off night. I don't like targeting centers against OKC. We've seen him be dominant against tougher opponents before, but I'll play a little bit safer tonight. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you mentioned, Brook Lopez, he's a GPP guy for me tonight, though. I just think, you look at some of his games and great matchups. He scored 20-plus points in the last 4 games there, but really solid. I just go back to those games against Denver and LA, and it's like, if I'm going to be paying up, I want a guy who's going to be a little bit higher than that. I mean, they were solid games. I just think he has a lower floor at times just because he doesn't always rebound. Like, I mean, look, 5, 4, 7 rebounds over the last 3 games. It's not great. It's not center-like. So.
And all those other options are so strong and their floors are so high that I agree. That makes sense. He is sort of a high ceiling, low floor guy tonight compared to what he's going up against. Yeah.
Right. You're passing on guys like DeAndre Jordan, Gortat, Gobert tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
I'm not really on any of them. It just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. One guy you take a look at, Sullinger, had a skin infection. I don't know how or what. I'm not going to ask any questions.
Never dig deeper on that.
No, I'll pass. Yeah, that's all I need. But, I mean, averaging 12, 9, and 2 over the last 5 games there. Averaging right around 26 minutes. Played just 21 last game, but fantasy points per minute has just been phenomenal lately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, trying to get pieces of that Houston-Boston game. 35 to 40, probably around his ceiling tonight. But again, if you get that, his price is pretty nice for that.
Yeah. One guy you're going to toss up, you mentioned Robin Lopez is a YOLO play when we were talking about totals. And I'm definitely on board with that, especially on DK. We can pair up another one just to kind of back him up a little bit. But points per dollar GPP play, and I don't hate it just because he scored 30-plus fantasy points in 6 of the last 10 games. 3 games of also scoring below 20 points, so that's where the concern is. But a nice matchup against Clippers, 7th most fantasy points to opposing centers. They ranked 28th in rebounding. Going to need to be out there to handle Jordan. So it's a matchup where I can see him going off for 35-plus. Mm-hmm. It really is. And we've seen it before.
And then this is where things get really intriguing. Quickly, I'm not sure he's totally in play tonight, but Frank Kaminsky has been playing pretty decent lately for his price. It's only 3,500 on DraftKings, and he's been averaging about 20 to 25 fantasy points a night. So intriguing, probably sitting him out just because of the Kings sort of options there, but keep an eye on him.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Kings option, it's Kufos sitting at a bare minimum tonight, going to draw the start most likely against Orlando's front court that is without Vucevic. It's basically going to be Jason Smith and Dwayne Dedman. So you're a battle of the backup front courts tonight, so that'll be fun.
I mean, it's an awful real basketball matchup, but in terms of sort of fantasy potential, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, you want to argue DFS, whether we watch NBA games, we covered it or not. I will sit down and watch Kings Magic tonight because I'm going to have about 4 to 5 players going between the two teams.
Adam Silver knows. Adam Silver knows.
Yeah. He's the GOAT owner. We know he's the best.
Yeah.
So that's going to wrap things up here with the Minutes to Win It podcast. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.